Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Social Justice Forums. I'm Daren, Jaime, and if you're asking what the show's about, well, we take a look at a lot of the issues and the inequities that people face. We promote civic engagement, and we have some great and informative guests. We want you to stay with us because guess what? The Social Justice Forums begins right now. Welcome back to the show. Black women and American Indian and Alaska Native women are 3 to 4 times more likely than non-Hispanic white women to die from pregnancy-related causes during pregnancy, birth, and up to 1 year postpartum. Now, the United States is facing a maternal and infant health crisis fueled by structural racism, driving significant racial disparities in maternal and infant morbidity as well as mortality. Join us now. We've got the founder of lead advocate at the Federation for International Gender and Human Rights, Dr. Ameena Ali, who joins us once again. And Dr. Ali, as always, a pleasure to have you back with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Daren. It's a pleasure to be here.
And when we talk about these statistics, they're pretty alarming. Bring us some insight on this.
Okay, well, they're not good statistics, and they're definitely not ones that I'm proud of here recently. However, the solutions are coming forward. We have a staggering number of women that are coming into maternal care, maternal health care, reproductive rights, and social rights that are determining their maternal outcomes. And these women are not getting the care that they deserve. Why? Because they're not specialized in offering the care in Western or modern medicine. These are very general cookie cutter procedures that are not specific, whether it be cultural, social, or identifiers to their orientations for birthing people. The BIPOC community, the Black and Indigenous people of color, and those that birth in those demographics are even more at risk. We are 4 to 5 times more likely to have a bad to tragic birth outcome than any other demographic on this planet. And that number has to change.
So when we talk about these statistics, let's talk about some of the options that are available. First of all, before we talk about options available, let's walk back on this. When we look at these statistics and we see the disparity in the numbers, what can we identify as potential root causes here?
Okay. Well, first of all, the system wasn't built for us. That's just that out there. The pink elephant in the room is it was not designed for us. We were just guinea pigs in it. And just know from the Tuskegee experiment to the father of obstetrics who used slaves and felt as though that we didn't have feelings, or because we were such industrious workers, we dealt with pain differently and we didn't require anesthesia during surgeries. All of the misnomers that are still carried over in subterfuges of the disparities, such things like when we come into the emergency room, we have people that assume that we are using the emergency room as our primary care physician. They believe that if we're under insured or we are underserved in the insurance factor, that we come in with ignorances about our health and the things that we know. So they come in with this godlike demeanor to them that allows them to believe that if we walk into the hospital, that we must listen to what they say because they're the boss, they're the medical professionals, and they are the ones in control, rather than doing this as a mutual thing, trying to breed the culture, the adaptation, the religion, even the demographics of where you live in the city into your care. It's very cookie cutter, very intentional to do as I say do and pray for the best at the end.
Yeah, there's a cultural competence I think is really lacking. I think some of the ways that we can talk about this is when we deal with community-based birth workers. There is a space for the workers. The workers are doing the work. They got boots on the ground. Give me the importance and how they can bridge the gap.
Okay, well, birth workers, first of all, are godsends. They are just magnanimous angels that have been ascended. You have to know the understanding of the calling of a birth worker. And this is very, very important because it sets up the mindset of those that come into this field. You don't hear girls growing up when they grow up. You don't hear them saying, well, I want to be a midwife when I grow up. You don't hear that conversation. You don't hear those words. You definitely don't hear the demographic of them even saying, I want to go into obstetrics for the specific purpose of reproductive justice. You just don't hear those conversations. Now you're starting to see young girls playing with dolls and you see them with the satchel in front of them breastfeeding and mocking moms that are breastfeeding. And you're seeing that happening, but they're still infants. So what we're seeing in that is to understand that birth workers are called. This is a calling. This is not, has not, and will never be a career field. It's only when you put it into industrial medicine, turn the nurses into this, and make it into this whole westernized industrialization is where you turn the tide from care to solutions. So that's one. Two is understanding that these women and men, especially those that are doulas and coming into the ancillary pieces of it, are coming into this simply to help. That is the only measure that these positions even pose. Being a doula is supportive work. It is supportive care, and it is designed to support the mother. Just simply becoming a doula has a whole different mindset that's attached to it. You come in knowing that you are going to support this woman from preconception to prenatal to postpartum and everything in between, from culture to language to liberties. You are doing this for the woman. Then you have to understand that they are a part of a team. There's no I in team. So just like there's no I in pregnancy, there is a huge piece that is coming together as this baby is coming forward. This is the true root of the term when they say it takes a village to raise a child, because it's not just the rearing of the child, it is the bringing forth of the child. And it takes everybody in the village to be a part of it. So the birth workers in their angelic form understand this coming into work every single day. And this is a support that we need to replicate and make content on. If you want to do something on Instagram, let's make content for that and bring that forward and make that a household word.
You talk about birth workers. I want to talk about mothers for a moment, because I think there's also this importance, right? When you talk about mothers in planning, and that planning phase, and creating a birthing plan. Give us more about the importance for a mother in creating that plan, and what should that mother actually be looking for when creating a plan?
Okay, well, first of all, it's a plan. So anything is apt to go wrong without further notice. So it is a guiding post. We don't want to hold too tight to the plan, but we want to be firm in our principles of the plan, the intention, and the reason behind it. In formulating thousands and thousands of birth plans over my career, I can honestly say the first thing I say after what is your name and date of birth, do you have a birth plan? And it is very incorporated into getting to know you as the birth plan is. Why? Because I want to know if you're an indigenous person. Knowing your name and your date of birth is fine. But if I know you're an indigenous person, you may not have certain criteria I even have to delve into. I know family is involved. I know tribe is important. I know lineage and legacy is going to have a weight. I know it's not going to be just you in the birth room. And I also know that you're going to come with your own traditions and cultures and things that you're going to bring with you. So I won't have to ask who's going to be in the birth room. I'm probably going to have to say, how many people are we going to allow in the birth room? And then there's going to be a thing where I'm going to say, what is mom's role? What is grandmom's role? What is other grandmom's role? And what do you think are great talents in this? So all of this is incorporated on top of going from a natural birth to a home birth to a hospital birth, a birth center birth. Trying to make sure the doula is incorporated. Who's going to be in the room when you're actually in labor? Are you going to labor at home? Are you going to be in the hospital when you labor? Or are you just going to physically birth? So the birth plan can choose anything from the scent of the candles to how long family and friends stay around and everything in between. So it is very, very important to make sure that you do this for the entire pregnancy. I always say you have 10 months to put this together. So it should be phenomenal when I get it, by the time I get it at the end.
You talk about doulas, and we haven't spoken about them yet, but they're a very important part of that birthing plan, the doula and the midwife. Speak to us about their importance and their role in the process.
Yeah, at 30 years as a birth worker, I have never gone into a birth without a doula. Yes, and there's a period at the end of that intentionally. That is how—
or exclamation point, I think, right?
Right, absolutely. And there's a reason why there's a pause, because that well-timed pause is to let you listen to that again when you replay it in your mind. I would not go into a birth without a doula. So anyone that's around me is going to be infused with the power of the doula. I've even had times when I'm in the car downstairs getting my stuff out of the car and the doula is on the phone with me saying, I see a head. And I'm like, by the time I get this up on that third floor, you're going to be birthing babies. So it's one of those things where she's going to be so empowered in her space that she may have to catch, and I just do paperwork later. And it's one of those things that's, again, it's not intentional. You never know when babies are going to come. But the idea is that she's going to be empowered before she gets there. That is how strong I value and I enrich my doulas. I currently have the Grace, GRRACEE, Doula Academy. There are 51 different types of doulas that we teach, orchestrate, and instruct. And we have these doulas in different fields. We have grand doulas, which are grandmoms that help you on postpartum. We have birth, prenatal, and labor doulas. We have doulas, we have a disability doula, which is ones that if you're in a wheelchair and you're birthing, you have someone that counters you. How about if someone is ill in nutrition before they get pregnant? We have a nutritional doula. We have doulas that deal with movement. Let's say you're in a car accident and you're dealing with back pains or you're paraplegic, quadriplegic. We have doulas that come in and will allow you to experience a pleasant birth experience on your terms based on that birth plan that you have and allow you to birth your way. And the 51 types of doulas that we teach is because each of those doulas are actual true doula cases that were needed in that time. And we use that as the fulcrum to develop a curriculum to train doulas in those specialties.
Walk me through this, because we talk a little bit about the work of a birth mother. We talked about having that birth plan and doulas and doing it at home or in another location. But a lot of people are saying that there is some concern when it comes to hospitalization, when it comes particularly to African-American mothers and hospitalization. How do you analyze or critique hospitals when it comes to the care for African-American mothers?
Well, I'm a forensic midwife. I like to call myself that because I go real far back when it comes to the pathology of this craft. If you remember, and I'm just going to take you back just a minute, either you or someone you know has either birthed a child at home or is a home birth child. If you're over the age of 50, 60, or 70, you were probably that child. Here's why. If you remember back in the day, your grandmother, great-grandmother, depending on how old you are, had 15, 16, 18 kids. 9 times out of 10, they weren't rich enough to go to the hospital and be cooped up in the hospital. I know my mother was birthing me at home until she realized I was 4 weeks overdue and realized that I was due July 4th and I came August 7th. So knowing even back there in the 60s and 70s that, it wasn't an exact science. So knowing that is to know home birthing is a part of the BIPOC community. And this is very, very relevant. When we were back in the indigenous days of slavery, we were having babies in outhouses, in huts. Look at the movie Color Purple. You didn't see Celie going to the hospital. And I use that fact to let you see that back in the day, we had midwives. And you see even her best friend was the one that birthed her baby. She wasn't even a midwife, but she was there birthing that baby. So to know that this is a part of who we are as a heritage, this is a part of who we are as a people. We were trained to be tolerable of our health and wealth subconsciously. We had to stay healthy because we were birthing all these babies. Likewise, when we came into the age of the industrialized medicine, we were birthing and nursing other babies. Remember that time? When we had other people's babies and we were wet nursing white babies and non-melanated babies, we'll just say that. And we were doing that because we were able to. There was no science, there was no class, there was no degree that we had to get. We just knew our milk was a little bit more enriched. Our babies didn't have brittle bones, and they realized that if that baby didn't have brittle bones, let's put our baby on her breast so our baby won't have brittle bones. And it was just an understanding. Now here it is, all of that knowledge, all of that wisdom, all of the integrity of what we knew back then has been lost to technology, industrialization, as though it never worked. So one of the things that I look at in this is I'm like, why can't we take what we know works and then industrialize that? Why did the hospitals drop midwives and said my grandmother was midwife, never made it past the 3rd grade. But if she tried to birth right now, she'd go to jail for practicing medicine without a license. What? She birthed 6,200 babies in her career. And knowing that that's almost a zip code and only lost 1 child, and that was due to leprosy. Oddly enough, let's go back with that disease. Lost 1 child to leprosy is to know that worked.
Right.
And not have a track record like that and not have some truth to that. Why did we lose that? And why did we take that out of the circular call of modern medicine? That's the question I have, and no one has been able to answer.
You talk about losing a baby. That brings the topic of maternal mortality. I want to talk about that because this is a number that we're seeing that's pretty alarming. But give us some statistics and give us your insight.
Okay, well, first of all, 99.99% of the time, the deaths of the baby or the mother is preventable. You can't claim modern westernization of medicine. You can't say how high tech and how developed you are as a country, and you're losing women and babies at such staggering numbers. You can't claim that. Stop saying you're an expert in OBGYN, and then the next time we see you on the news, you've lost a Black mother to an avoidable ailment. Stop saying that you are this chief of something, and then with all of your chiefdom, you couldn't find so many Indians to stop the death of this woman who was healthy 5 minutes ago. So when we see these things and we understand these big titles and big labels, we have to understand there's accountability to this. And when we see this, we see these numbers increasing because of the lackadaisical mindset of these quote unquote experts. We have doctors with more letters after their name than before it, and they want you to trust them because they're in the room. I'm not going to trust you unless what you're doing in the room is going to save my daughter. I'm not going to trust you if what you're doing in my room is causing my daughter some ill. And I'm definitely not going to trust you just because you walked in. So this is where we have to come down off of that egoic God complex that we have in medicine, very prominent, very instilled. And we have to get back to what works. We have to look at warning signs, and we have to be effective every time a woman needs us. Now we talk about, oh, well, Dr. Ameena, we have this thing where we can't be 100% of the time. Well, then that's where another person steps in and takes over. But don't say that I'm on a 12-hour shift, and because I've had a long 12-hour shift, that's why I didn't see that, or I was at the counter and I was doing notes and I'm only one person. And yeah, she was only one person and now she's no more. I was doing my job, and all of these cries for help that the medical teams are asking for in healthcare that are not being addressed. It trickles down to the mother. And
so what can we do to reduce some of this? What are some of the strategies we can talk about?
Well, first of all, we need to get to be like Canada and the other schools that don't require payment of their education. If we can get to free schools and we can get to women and men being able to go to school and be properly trained without having to worry about that bill, which is 80% of the conversation when you even want to go to college, you will be able to focus on your care. I have a mentor that has been birthing longer than I've been alive, and she is chief of the medical school in Cuba. This woman has had more people on airplanes going to medical school in Cuba from the United States than I think anybody in the world. And do you know there is a 98% success rate in women and men that she is trained in Cuba? But we're not talking about that. We're not talking about that there's more OBGYNs in families in Cuba than there is in the medical community alone in Cuba. We're not talking about that. There is no death rates like this in it. I mean, if they have a 0.0% death rate of a child or a woman, it's probably gestational, which means the baby was at risk before birth, or the mother was at risk before birth. So to know that is to know that their mortality rates are so low, but we're not studying those countries. We're looking at the socio side of it, or we're looking at the political side of it and not showing the relevance of the maternal care side of it to research it or to at least study it. And we're not looking at what works. We're trying to get more content, again, Instagram mindsets, and we're trying to develop more programming and not looking at the things that work. I believe permanently that people of color, BIPOC people of color, should be able to access full spectrum care. This means, and I'm going to say this slowly, this means that there should be a quality to the care of service in the community that is developed by well-trained, well-paid, and well-languaged workers, which means if you look like me and you're in my community, I should be the one taking care of you. So this is where we need to get back to, get people back into their communities to be able to help people of their communities. And I guarantee you within 6 months, we'll see a difference in that number. But you know, the industrialized, very Judeo-Christian WASP look is really what we're looking at as to the cause and effect to women that look like me birthing.
Yeah. Dr. Ameena Ali, so much, but we got to leave it there. Thank you for being with us. I think it's a great conversation to have, and it's an unfortunate conversation to have, but hopefully we can see some more answers, some solutions, and hopefully we can reduce this maternal mortality rate. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'll see you again.
All righty. Dr. Ameena Ali, our guest here, and as you're taking a break on the social justice forums, we don't want you to go anywhere. We got another guest, another hot topic right after this. Welcome back. The cannabis industry is ever growing as more and more states and municipalities decriminalize and legalize the recreational use of marijuana. The Latino Cannabis Association works to guide policy and promote sustainability in marijuana growing and cultivation within the state. And joining us now and sharing more, we've got the Latino Cannabis Association's co-founder, Jeffrey Garcia, and secretary to the board, Indhira Mojica. And we thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
And I'll start off first. Larry, we'll start with you and talk a little bit about where we are today, because obviously, as we're seeing this progression that's happening, more and more states are really embracing it. And we do know that there's still disparities when it comes to cannabis being available as a business for people of color.
That is correct. Well, where we are today is obviously the MRTA was passed in 2021. And right now the state is working on its conditional programs. Right now, the conditional hemp farmers are the first ones to start growing cannabis. They're also going to be folks that are going to be manufacturing, meaning where you see the gummies and vapes and pre-rolls and things like that. There is the conditional card program that was just wrapped up in September. That is for the conditional retail licenses, right? The dispensaries that we're going to see, the first ones in New York State. The state right now is going through those applications, and we will soon see legal cannabis sales within the state of New York, with actual dispensaries selling homegrown New York State cannabis. So we're looking forward to that. We understand that, social social equity was a big component of the MRTA, right? Making sure that people that were most impacted were the first to market in this industry. And, even though we're not perfect, I think New York has gotten it right compared to other states, right? We're doing much better when it comes to that. And we want to be a part of that, right? We want to be that voice in our Latino communities to give the folks an open door to get into this industry in a legal way and in an equitable and fair way as well.
Indhira, talk to me about the work that's being done behind the scenes. Obviously, social equity is the huge push. We know that for far too long, people in communities of color have been criminalized just for this particular use. But yet and still, when it comes to the legal sale, we find that sometimes it's kind of it's like a hard jump to be able to enter into the business. So give me a little bit about the work that you're doing and your thoughts about this.
So first, we are participating in a lot of educational forums. We are part of many panels. We have a website that we update with information, and through social media, we try to educate our communities of what's going on. Right now, the most difficult thing is fighting the stigma that's in our communities when it comes to cannabis. So we're working on changing that. We're trying to teach our communities with information that's already out there, documented about the health and wellness benefits of cannabis, but just most importantly, we're trying to inform people of the economic benefit that is coming with this industry to New York.
Yeah. And as you're doing this right now, I know that there's so many opportunities that are out there for people to really take advantage of in terms of getting connected to resources. Are you satisfied that access is going to be equitable?
Well, access to capital in this industry has always been a big problem in every single state, right? Especially for social equity applicants, right? There are a lot of barriers that are there to protect social equity folks, right, from being used, but those same barriers also can be a hindrance, right, in getting capital. So I think that that's where we come in, and stakeholders come in and have a voice and maybe can inform the Office of Cannabis Management and others, right, on which way to go with this. Because again, we want to make sure we have our fair share. We want to make sure that we have a chance to succeed in this industry, but it's a very, very capital intensive industry. And we need to have the finances and the resources to be able to do that. Banking is another issue. That's why we need safe banking at the federal level to pass. We've been working closely with a community bank here in New York, in the Bronx, that started in the Bronx, similar to the way we started the LCA, right? Bronx Bank. They've been a great partner with us to start opening up bank accounts for our members, where banking is a very difficult thing. So, that is one of the ways that obviously the state, the city can really help. I'm part of the New York City's cannabis committee. I was appointed there by the mayor and the SBS commissioner. So we hope that out of those committees, and at least when it comes to the city, we will be doing things that are very equitable for these members once they do get licenses from the state.
Indhira, talk to us about this. When we talk about this social equity, it's very important, it's very critical. But yet and still, as we're looking and trying to break this down with what's happening and what's coming around the corner, a lot of people still are, up in arms about the whole cannabis legislation. What's been done by way of really talking to the public and making them aware, and potentially people, about where we are today and how things have progressed?
So the Marijuana Regulation Taxation Act uh, has a goal. They have committed to a goal of awarding 50% of their licenses to social equity applicants. So we need to take that and we need to run with it and hold them accountable with that. And as the Latino Cannabis Association, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make noise. We're trying to be at all the cannabis events. Whenever the government is talking about cannabis, we're trying to be present to make sure that we are gathering the resources that we need, the information that we need. So when it's time to submit these applications to be part of this cannabis industry, we are well prepared. We, as in women, minorities, people of color, distressed farmers, veterans, we need to put that voice out there, collect these resources, and make sure that we're ready and take advantage of this opportunity that we're being given. It's an opportunity to create generational wealth, is an opportunity to create profitable businesses, and we just need to be ready to take full advantage.
Yeah. When I think about this, I think about just what you said, generational wealth. There are some great positive advantages for people economically to be able to take part in. I think the tragedy that so many in our community talk about is the fact how people have profited off of our criminalization. And now you're at the place right now where you'll profit off of ownership and the criminalization. People are just now, some are overcoming, and others are still having a hard time dealing with this whole decriminalization.
And to add to that, this industry was built on our backs. So if someone is going to reap the benefits, we should be first in line. So if these businesses are coming into our communities, we should be the owners. If someone's going to hire people to get into this industry, those people should be people like us. So we need to make sure that we stay on top of this and that we control our neighborhoods and our community and we keep the money in our communities.
Yeah, Larry?
That is correct. If I can piggyback on that, that is a very important topic when it comes to the Latino Cannabis Association, is making sure that we keep things in our community, and not just for the businesses, and not just for the plant touching part of the business, but also bringing our community in through the ancillary businesses, the contractors, the architects, the lawyers, the engineers, those local folks that a lot of our members already use in their businesses, in their restaurants, in their supermarkets, in their bodegas, to do the work, to bring them in, get them MWB qualified, and then use them to build out your businesses and to be part of that generational wealth building within your communities.
Yeah. So if people want more information, what exactly do they do to stay up to date with this?
So we have our website, which is Latino Cannabis Association.org, and we have a social media also, underscore Latino Cannabis. So up there, we constantly post events that we're attending or events that we are hosting, so people can find us on those platforms.
About the public awareness, obviously the goal is to educate the public, to get them to take advantage of the opportunities and to see about the access to resources, and some of which are becoming more and more available because of the advocacy that organizations such as yourself are doing. What are you seeing on your end in terms of a public response by minorities to this?
Well, we have seen a very good response. Again, I think that one of the further the work that we need to do is also get into the weeds, get, no pun intended, right? In our communities, making sure those folks that are still in that legacy market, to say to them, you know what, look into, let's bring you into the legal form. You've done a great job. You've built, a little entrepreneurship within your ecosystem. Now let's make that legitimate. Let's make that so that now this business that you had for some years, you can legitimize it, and then eventually, pass it on to other family members, to your kids when they grow up, right? Because again, if it's about generational wealth, it's not just talking about what's going into our pocket, but what's going into our kids and our kids' pockets, right? And I think that that's, where we need to be. We also need to educate the public, educate our grandmothers and our aunts and uncles that now this is now this is legal. It's not what they used to see out in the streets back in the day, right? You know, this is gonna be a legalized industry, is a legalized industry, and you're gonna see locations now in your neighborhood and what that's gonna look like.
Yeah.
And
So
to add to that, we're promoting safety because now you're going to be able to go to a dispensary and get what you need from there, and it's going to be tested, it's going to be regulated, it's going to be safe. And I think that's very, very important in our community.
can you give me a little bit more insight? Because I think for many of the common person, they don't know how this thing actually works out. So if a person visits a dispensary, owns a dispensary, what can we find in a dispensary?
So, a dispensary, you'll be able to buy flour, you'll be able to buy products that are made of cannabis. So, you'll be able to buy vapes, oils, sodas, edibles, gummies. So those are all the products. So anything that you can think of that is made from that flower will be available to you. There'll be people educating you on your purchase. So it's actually going to be a great experience, and most of all, safe, that you know what you're consuming. This is being tested in labs before it's put on a shelf.
Another great point that Indira makes is, you know, when it comes to the wellness of this plant, right? There are a lot of oils, a lot of tinctures, there are creams and things that you could put on your body, you know, for aches and pains that could be very helpful to people suffering from rheumatoid arthritis, and many other illnesses. People who suffer from cancer use cannabis as a way to alleviate their pain. So this is also a health and wellness plant that can be very helpful to those folks. And maybe they weren't aware of it. Maybe it's not something they thought about. But now when you go into these dispensaries, people are going to educate you on that and will be able to help you or maybe help a family member, right, that is going through some difficult times.
Yeah. From your assessment, I mean, you've got the boots on the ground. Talk to me about what you're seeing by way of public participation and interest, because we know that in the beginning there was a lot of criticism and pushback. Are we seeing more and more generated interest now in the cannabis industry locally?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, you know, I think people are looking more and more into this. What I really also want to put out there is that let's get out of that mind frame that we should only look into doing dispensaries. There's so many other licensure categories in this industry. You know, when it comes to cultivation, when it comes to manufacturing, distribution, consumption lounges, these are all the different types of licenses, and there are a few more micro licenses. But let's not say that only dispensaries offer us, because maybe that's what we're used to, you know, that selling part. There's so many other components to this industry that we should look into as minorities, as Latinos, and Blacks, and really make a difference in those areas as well.
Yeah.
And to add to that, there's other ways that we can participate. It's not only going for a license. There's a lot of use for ancillary companies. So we'll be able to use cleaning services, cleaning companies, attorneys, contractors. So there's going to be so much opportunity that we can continue to keep in our communities, and for the people that look like us, people of color, women, minorities. So ancillary companies is also another way to get into this industry.
Larry and Indhira, thank you so much. I think we got to leave it there, but very informative information. But before I go, please, if people want to tap into the Latino Cannabis Association, how do they go about doing that?
Indira, you
So
want
they
to take
can,
that?
sure. So they can reach us at our social media, which is Latino_cannabis.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there, and thank you so much for being with us, and great conversation, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Take care now. All right. We are taking a quick break. We do have more show coming up right after this. Welcome back to the show. Well, since the financial crisis, New York City has seen a huge drop in the number of Black homeowners. Black Americans have been systemically and intentionally discriminated against for generations at every step of the home buying process, resulting in a 30% Black home ownership gap. Joining us now is the founder of Real Estate Investors Association, New York City, Dr. Teresa R. Martin. She comes back to us, and Dr. Teresa, good to have you back.
Thank you so much for having me back. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to have you back, and I wanted to, sound the alarm a little bit because as I look at these numbers, I think they're pretty startling. Knowing first of all that home ownership is hard as it is so many times for African Americans. When we talk about New York City, we're seeing the numbers continue to go down. Give me your thoughts about this because is the economy, taxes? Why are we seeing this gap?
I think it's a combination of all of what you just mentioned. I think the biggest issue that we're seeing right now is that we're being priced out.
Right.
You have, for generations, we know that home ownership was what we were focused on. We save our monies, but right now, all the monies that we've saved because of student loan, debt or whatever we have now you're looking at in New York City, we're looking on average at $500 to $1,000 per square foot. Where are we going? Okay, so we're totally being priced out of the market, and that is attributed to the racial wealth gap.
Yeah, we're being priced out, and but nationwide, I think because of the economy, it's been said that we're probably at an all-time low. Financial markets and investors are saying we're at an all-time low when it comes to people just even applying. So, I mean, it's almost like a double-edged sword because we're not seeing applications happen nationwide. And then at the same time, we're seeing so many people of color really not even enter into the housing market.
Well, okay. So one, I don't know about the statistics as far as are we looking or are we being diverted? Because the aspect of it is, when we go to different places, we still know gentrification is real. 100% real. Okay. We still know that redlining is real. Okay. So why is it that Black home ownership is the lowest it has been in the past decade? Okay, as opposed to where our counterparts are. So there's something to be said about the all-time low, but we have to really get back to why is it an all-time low? We're not as Black and brown people, we are not taking advantage or being able to take advantage of the boom of the pandemic, whereas other people have been. Okay, right. And I truly believe that has something to do with one, systemic. That is, I believe it's purposeful because we still have that redlining, but I also still have to attribute it back to our financial gap. From the income, we lost jobs. There's a lot of people who are still getting defrauded in deed fraud, and they're scared to enter the market. So there's a lot of things that's contributing, but the bottom line is at the end result, yes, there is a 10-year gap from where we were 10 years ago in Black home ownership.
Yeah, I was riding down Harlem just the other day, and it was, pretty sad to see the amount of vacant buildings and then also the amount of vacancies. And having a conversation with somebody from the neighborhood, and they were saying, listen, a few years ago, I was really looking into purchasing property here in Harlem. This is where I've grown up. This is where I've lived. And now I've had the opportunity, hopefully, to be able to purchase a property. But he said, but Daren, this is not real for me right now. He says, as a matter of fact, I got to look in either Pennsylvania or even, Delaware to see about having a home and owning it because just being priced out. And then the second part that he said which is very easy to watch, is that the flow of gentrification has seemed to increase more steadily throughout places like Harlem and Brooklyn and New York City, whereas though the question remains, what's to come?
What's to come is we really have to come together and really figure out what are we doing as far as trying to build the home ownership, getting it back, the business ownership, getting it back, right? Because, we know as African Americans, Black entrepreneurship for generations, that has been how we built our wealth. Okay. And what's happening is you have a lot of other cultures who are pooling monies together to get that property. Okay, we have to come back and figure out the finances. We have to get back onto how are we generating additional income to throw it off into some pools that are going to give us the returns that we need to throw it off into some real estate. Because if we're not going to come on the same page, if we're not trying to reach out to get that assistance from, communities that are looking to close the gap, then we're going to be priced out everywhere we go. So it's not a matter of, okay, well, we can't buy in New York, we're going to go to Pennsylvania. Guess what? It's nationwide. This is not just a New York thing. This is a nationwide thing. And we really have to figure out, what are we doing at home? What are we doing in our families to make sure that we're securing things? Because we have family members who, have inherited properties, right? Born and raised in these properties, and now they're losing those properties, right? So we're losing, properties where we now have to figure out, how do we sustain, and then how do we obtain? So we really have to have a different type of conversation, because it really boils down to, finance, business, real estate. We have to kind of have everything working together if we're going to kind of close this wealth gap.
Yeah. So we talk a lot about problems. Let's talk. You talked a little bit about solutions. What's one of the first things that we could do to really address this?
Look at your finances. look at your finances. Find out what's going out and what's coming in. And then let's figure out how we close the gap. I always tell people, look at your beacon. Where do you want to go? Where are you right now? Now we have the gap. How are we going to now close the gap? This is like a family, family combined, tool. So the first thing is knowing what our finances look like, how good it is, how bad it is, because we can always do better and we can always improve. But until we actually get the diagnostic, go under the microscope, do the x-ray to see what's going on, then we're not going to know how to play this game. And we have to know the rules, and the rules are finances. We got to get that in order. So that's number one, just getting your stake at the table, being able to understand what it is that we need. And that's the gap.
So after we get the finances in order, I want to talk a little bit about this year, first-time home buyers, because we haven't seen too many, we should say we haven't seen the numbers that we normally have seen in this area. What can we do in terms of first-time home buyers and resources? Because are the resources still out there and available for first-time home buyers to help them in their role, on their road to home ownership?
I believe that there still exists the places that you used to be able to go to before. And, you still have Habitat for Humanity. You still have, some of these other, groups that are looking to help in the first-time home buyer market. The problem that I'm seeing, now I'm going to put on my legal hat, right? In the foreclosure realm, it's not a matter of getting in. It's a matter of sustaining. Okay, so a lot of times when we're looking to purchase that first property, we don't look at the total cost of the property. And so that's going to be a problem as well. And so the underlying things that I'm always going to keep coming back to is the financial means on how we're going to be able to acquire and sustain, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to pass these things down. So building generational wealth and breaking the chains of generational poverty really starts at the education phase. So right. Yes, it still exists. However, we still have to come back to the table and still do, the grunt work, which is looking at those ugly things under the table called finances.
And we're talking about looking at the finances. Let's look at them for a minute. What are some of the key things people need to be paying attention to? Of course, we know the debt to income ratio, how much money that you make, how much money that you spend. But beyond that, where do we go from there?
Once you look at your debt to income ratio, you also want to look at your debt to limits. Also, how much debt you have based on your outstanding limits, whether that's credit cards, equity loans, or whatever the case may be. So that's that part. But also there's things where you can actually now start taking part in trying to build up those additional streams of income, right? We're all scared of that digital age. I know I am, like crypto, and you hear all these things. I was like, I'm not going to touch crypto. However, there's something on the market called, real estate tokenization, right? So wealth creation through tokenization, right? So basically that's a way where you can own a fractional share, just like you would a drip fund, in the market. You can have a fractional share for as little as $500, and that can now start your journey to asset creation, wealth creation, real estate, ownership. So there's a lot of things that we need to start looking at, but we got to get educated before we start investing in things. But I'm just saying that there are things out there that is available that we really just need to start opening up our eyes to and getting a little bit more educated about, because I think that's a great way. I love drips. I gave drips to my grandchildren, as they were growing up, because I didn't give gifts. I gave shares of stock. And that's what they always knew. So every year they would just come and say, what stock are we buying today? And that's how it was. Now there's a new opportunity for me to now, also add, real estate tokenization. So now I can give my grandchildren, pieces of real estate so that they can actually start building their wealth as they start growing up. So those are some of the things that we can start looking at, as far as adding things to our, toolbox. If we're not ready to invest in it yet, we can actually start just looking at it and getting educated about it, and never invest in anything you don't understand.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. You talked about don't invest in things that you don't understand. That's one thing. But talk about some of the other things that we should be avoiding in this area.
Okay, so this is my main thing, and I'm sure in the space, most of our listeners and viewers would be aware of. Deed theft has not gone away, and it is prevalent right now in our Black communities for the home ownership. Right? Because we're so desperate, because, with the foreclosure luring and lurking around, and people are desperate because they don't have the income. You have people knocking on your door and, saying that, I can help you. Don't worry about the banks. I can do what banks can't do. Always be leery of that. Whenever something sounds too good to be true, it usually is. And so don't sign anything that you don't understand. And if you are thinking about doing something, never forego going to legal counsel and getting legal counsel to see what they think about, a document, because we have a lot of people who don't understand signing their name, thinking it was one thing, and they're signing over their deeds. And now they're losing their homes, to fraud. And this is something that we definitely need to make sure that we are paying attention to. So yes, that is one of the things that you definitely should be avoiding.
Yeah. And as time goes on, I mean, obviously there's so many more things to pay attention to. You got these cyber scams, you got these other things. You got so many people trying to really lure people in. And it's a joy to have home ownership. It's a joy to own property. It's a joy to be able to have some, financial means. But yet and still, there's so many things that are coming at people that we have to really be on guard against.
Absolutely. And the cyber attacks is one of them. So you really have to pay attention, because people are coming in. That's why I don't do anything on my mobile phone. I know we go on mobile, and I don't know where the waves are going or anything like that. So I want to encourage everyone to just pay attention to who's sending you things. Don't open links that you don't know who's sending it. Check the from, when you're going through your email and inboxes, check the from, because they have been able to mask. It'll say your bank, and then you'll click on something, and this is the way that they are actually stealing your information. So we absolutely have to pay attention to this digital age, because they are cyber attacks. We have people stealing deeds, digitally. We have people who are, going into homes, Airbnb, renting things out, because homeowners are absentee homeowners, and they're renting out places, and you're signing things thinking you're renting from this person, and it's not that person. So we really have to start paying attention, to people who are coming at us and what we're signing. And if people are approaching you and you're not looking for it, you already should have your guard up. Okay. I say that, if people are coming to you, you have not asked for anything, pay attention to that, because it really could be a scam. And, it 99% of the time probably is a scam. So definitely do your checks and protect our elders, our seniors. We have a lot of seniors, they have good credit, they have debt paid off. There's a lot of people stealing their credit, and we as a family have to make sure that we're protecting our parents and our grandparents, because they're coming at them. And our grandparents don't like debt. So if anyone's saying that, somebody did something to them, they're willing, more likely than not, to give information over the phone. So we really have to start educating from the top up and from the bottom down. So our grandchildren, our children, and our parents and our grandparents, we have to have the conversation what to protect them from, because they may not be on the conversations. They're not internet friendly. So they're missing all this information that we need to apprise them of.
Yeah. Dr. Teresa, before we wrap up, I definitely want to get people connected to you. You do some great work. How can people get about being connected to the work that you do?
I would love for people to contact me through RIA NYC. You know, that's the organization. And basically, we have a free online, community where we're actually helping people build ideal businesses, receive the right information at the right time. You know, no one's ever pushing anything on them, but they get to ask their questions. It's a forum where you can ask people questions if you want to, make some money in real estate or what have you, or save your home or whatever you need to be. We have the experts within that community that will definitely be able to assist you in that. So my Real Estate Investor and Entrepreneur Association is definitely there to help anyone who wants to. I call myself the real estate prophet. I am spreading the real estate gospel to all who will listen. So I hope that everyone joins me in my community, because we're doing some great works and we need the help of the community if we're going to build, create, sustain generational wealth through real estate and business ownership.
Dr. Teresa R. Martin, thank you so much for being with us. And if you want to know, she is the founder of the Real Estate Investors Association, New York City. And we thank you for giving us this insight. It's a very crucial time, but I think it's also a time that we should be taking advantage of what is going on out there. And also not just taking advantage, but also really being aware of the things that are out there and the challenges that we face. So thank you so much for being with us and sharing.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much. This has been a pleasure.
All righty. Well, I want to let you know we come to the end of the Social Justice Forums today. We hope that you enjoyed this week's discussion. Now, we want to let you know if you want to rewatch any of this, you can catch Recablecast right here on BronxNet TV or BronxNet.org. And if you want to join in on the conversation and present your point of view, well, guess what? You are more than welcome to do that by joining us on our social media platforms at BronxNet TV. We encourage you, please join us next week. We'll continue to elevate the conversation, more discussion, more on the issues that matter the most. I'm Daren Jaime saying thank you for watching here on the Social Justice Forums.